media such as websites and applications that facilitate the creation and sharing of information, ideas, and interests, and other forms of expression through virtual communities of networks. Note the keyword, sharing through virtual communities of networks. These are the examples of social media: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Do not be confused with other information sharing platforms such as Google or the news on your television, as there are no social interaction between you and that media. As for the term social evil, Collins Dictionary defined it as anything detrimental to the society or its citizens. For example, organized crimes, exploitation against women and children, and many other serious issues that we are facing today. Social media is a tool that can be misused to indoctrinate the masses. Anybody with any amount of influence can spread propaganda, hide the truth, spread lies, just to be able to control the life and the decision of others. A prime example is the increase of teen suicide cases caused by cyberbullying. Statistics by the National Health Center for Health Statistics, NHCS, has shown a troubling increase of teen suicide by 25% in the past 8 years, caused by cyberbullying. Guess what else has risen in the past 8 years? The popularity of social media. The exposure of human vulnerabilities is multiplied exponentially by social media. One innocent post on the internet can be spread around the world and turn into a misleading information in just 1 second. Taking accountability on social media almost does not exist, as it seems like there are no real world consequences, since people on social media do not physically interact with each other. Dear parents, would you like to see your children be brainwashed by false information and propaganda?
No.
Do any of you be willing to see your friends and family be abused, both physically and mentally, when they expose themselves on the internet?
No.
I'm sure that we all know the answer even before anyone answers the question. Remember, any information posted on the internet about yourself immediately exposes your vulnerability. With that, our team strongly agrees that social media has more negative impact to the society compared to positives.
Thank you. That's what Adam said. He said it's a tool that can be misused and humans are vulnerable to it. Now, what has Adiputra has got to say about this? Let's welcome Adiputra.
Thank you, Kapitan. Ladies and gentlemen, judges, we do not share the same cynical view that the proposition has proposed, saying that there's more negatives than positives. We believe there is great positives here. But first, the proposition team has provided definition, but not a framework on what is exactly social media. Social media, I'm going to tell you, is nothing new. It is a framework of cognition that we have worked with since time immemorial, since we became cognizant of our surroundings, since we became aware. It's how we are able to compute things that we may not interact with, but we just happen to know. There's an innate understanding of knowledge that we all share, even though we've never interacted with one another. For example, you go to a place of worship, a mosque, a church, or temple. You don't exactly know the properties of those places, but somehow you and people around you understand there's a spiritual quality that is shared amongst everyone. That is what social media in its cognitive form represents, and that is the framework that we will be using for this debate. Secondly, when it comes to the negative impacts, the proposition team has brought many social ills, yes, great evils that has been fermented through the use of social media. But however, we must understand everything works in balance. There's a yin and a yang, where there is great evil that can be done through social media. We must acknowledge on the other side of the coin that there's great good that can be done. False news, yes. Fake news, yes. Misinformation, yes. But have we forgotten about support groups, online forums that help people that go through certain issues and struggles within their lives? I'm sure everyone here has gone through a very difficult time in their life and found a lot of solace with the online community through virtual interaction.
Yeah.
However, this does not even go through the personal level. We can see around the world, social media has been used to provide progression through human development that helps to tackle injustices everywhere. I would like to point to you the Arab Spring. What was the engine that actually motivated youths around Syria, Egypt, and the rest of the Arab world to rise up and march against injustices committed upon their people? It was social media, and not the social media that we come to understand, such as Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. No, there are other platforms such as encrypted forums as well, online message boards that are used to spread the message, to mobilize, to capitalize on this new wave, to make sure that injustice and corruption is something that is not permitted wherever we go. And we've seen that kind of success. Egypt, they went through a great social upheaval for the better. Tunisia, now we're seeing Iran, after the brutal acts committed by the Iranian government to young Iranian woman Mahsa Amini for the fact that she wants to regain sovereignty over her own life. Even though the Iranian government has shut that down, that avenue, it's still being spread through social media, and we can see great change happening. So we don't share the same view that there's positives or that there's negative impacts of social media, because social media is the engine for which human progression can actually actualize itself. Yes, there are troubles along the way, but through struggle is the crucible for which humans evolve and become better than what we are today and become a stronger individual tomorrow. Over to you, Captain.
Don't share with you. He says that yin and yang. Now let's see what Rachel Chan has got to say about this. Rachel Chan, please.
Fellow Toastmasters and guests, and my dear opponents, social media, what is it? It is actually a virtual online community that allows everyone to create their own profile. The profile that contains their own identity, their backgrounds, their interests, the love of music, identities of their families, from where they have studied, their education, and almost everything and anything under the sky. Here's the thing, there's always the other side of the coin, whereby our opponents say all the good things about the social media, spreading the good news, spreading the awareness. But let's not forget, human is not perfect. We always tend to fall prey to predators. Social media is also a platform, a breeding ground for addiction, a breeding ground for scammers, and also it encourages people to use more time than usual to check on the status of other people through Facebook and of course other platforms. These may cause depression and anxiety, not forgetting the cyberbullies. On social medias or virtual communities, there is no sense, five senses that we can use, allow us to use our five senses to judge whether these online objects or subjects or human shows their authenticity. Therefore, there is a high risk and high exposure to people to fall prey to scammers, as well as to fall into prey to become anxiety and depression. Let us not forget, studies have shown there are higher increased numbers of people who going through depression, not only adults, but children as young as 5, 10, below teenagers. Not forgetting the pornography as well as the pedophiles. These are the places where the vulnerability of people that are able to exploit themselves to these risks. ladies and gentlemen, let us forget the other side of the coin. Social media is something that we use through the device. Just how much can you use a device to see the authenticity of the opposite? Back to you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you heard. Rachel said that the other side of the coin is a breeding ground for scammers. Now, what do we have Muhammad Hafizul to say about this? Muhammad Hafizul, please.
Thank you very much, Captain, and very good evening to judges, opposing team, and to all social media users here. All right. So today, social media has the biggest positive impact in economy since Industrial Revolution. Do you remember Industrial Revolution? Of course you don't, because you weren't around. But I would like to point out 3 reasons why it's such a case. So the first one is democratizations of entrepreneurship. Before social media, it takes a lot of money to market your brand. But nowadays, simply anyone can do it because all of us, I repeat, all of us have access to these tools. Now, if you just look over here, and social media has made commerce more accessible. Hence, we are seeing trends of pop-up food stalls, local arts, and fashion. The conclusion is SME and social media are interdependent. To see that the significant, in Malaysia, SME contributed to almost 40% of Malaysia's GDP and a whopping 48% of employment. So this symbiosis between these two is too great to be ignored. And if you just look another one, shopping inspiration by social media actually responsible for 37% of the decision to new interesting product. So this is nothing new. And I would like to also talk about how disruptive the system is. Remember how last time we always have the middleman or a dealer, a sole distributor? Not anymore. The biggest middleman today we have? Influencers. And the best thing about influencers is that there's no monopoly. Everyone can be influencers. You don't need a huge amount of money to set up a company to be a marketer. Look at these influencers. Even major economy like Brazil and China have almost like 40% decided by the influencers for buying decisions. Another one, borderless potential customers. When Admiral Cheng Ho visited Malacca in 15th century, he created a foundation of trade between China and Malacca back then. But nowadays, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram replace Cheng Ho here as a bridge between these two nations. Another one that we can look here, there are actually 4.74 billion social media users in the world. That's, ladies and gentlemen, half of the population of the world. Humanity has been conducting business for millennia. There's nothing new here. Social media simply assists us in marketing our businesses more effectively, utilizing our budget more efficiently, and running our business more ingeniously. Social media, we know today, has been around for a longer time and part of our part of us. Social media today merely amplified what we already do as human beings. For this reasons, ladies and gentlemen, social media does not have more negative impact than positive. Back to the captain.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Hafizul. Hafizul said SME and social media are interdependent. It influences the economy. Half the world population are on social media. Now, what has got Dr. Max has to say about this? Yes, Dr. Max.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the floor, members of the opposition, and members of the jury. Well, let me walk you through a thought that I had today. If I were to use social media and I would like to pitch to you a business in 5 minutes, and I tell to one person, and this one person will tell to another person, so how long it will spread, I'll tell you. In 125 minutes, it will reach to 33 million people.
For one day, it will reach to 2.84 times 10 to the power of 82, which is including aliens from other planets. So that means that's a lot. So let me tell you, if that information was fake, I could misuse it to my advantage, being the person who wants to take advantage of the mass media. So, ladies and gentlemen, members of the floor, that is why we stand on the notion that social media has more negative impact onto the society because it subconsciously impacts our very vulnerable psyche. So as my first speaker has talked about political issues, my second speaker has talked about health and social issues, and now I'm going to talk about marketing issues. Yes, fine. There are a lot of great things happening as shown by TM Hafizul, but however, let me share to you to correct you in a bit. So it's actually 2/3 of the world's users are actually on social media. And to further bring you all to a point where I would share with you in 2019, there are about 10,000 cases of cybercrime in Malaysia. And 1 year after that, there is a 99.5% increase of that number. So we have about 20,000 cases of cybercrime. Cybercrime happens through a lot of these social platforms, e-commerce, social commerce. So the difference between these two, social commerce is commerce that is done through Facebook, through TikTok, and so on. And e-commerce is goes to Shopee, which is initially a shopping app. But what can you see now in Shopee? PM for price. And did you know that infringes on our Data Consumers Act 1999? There is no such thing as PM for price. There is a statement that entrepreneurs should display their prices exactly how it is. And did you know that slimming pills are actually against the law? Well, smoking and pornography is very much a given. So that is why I said this is a breeding ground for all scammers to misuse. There's a lot of problems regarding people self-proclaimed as financial gurus, forex gurus, giving misinformation to people who are vulnerable. And as a result of this, you know what's coming. It's cybersecurity crime, where we trade information, we trade sensitive information, and that's where you get cybercrime, fraud, and etc. So that being said, or rather we, still stand firm on a notion that social media has more negative impact because it is able to subconsciously affect our vulnerable psyche to commit social evil. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. As you say, it affects our psyche and increases cybercrime. Now, Dr. Vanessa, what have you got to say about what he has put forward? Dr. Vanessa, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The proposition talks about Shopee, but according to their definition, Shopee does not fit into their definition of social media. But I will still address the talk about cybercrime. Crime happens anywhere. It happens in the real world, it happens on cyberspace. You can't prevent it. Even without social media, crime still occurs. There is no difference. It's just a different form of media. And we talk about our second speaker earlier, who talked about the medical side of things. Their position is that it increases depression and addiction. This is empirically false. Karim et al. Has done a systematic review that states that there is no definitive proof that social media causes mental health disorders. Furthermore, it is interpersonal relationship and family dynamics that makes depression worse. We also can talk about Waingakar, who state that youths use social media to increase connectivity, to increase their knowledge on mental conditions, as well as to find support online. This is very important for us in the Asian community because these topics are very much stigmatized. People are afraid to talk about it because they do not want to be marginalized by the community. Social media provides the voiceless with a voice, giving them an opportunity to seek help among specialists, among people suffering from similar conditions, and this has brought mental health awareness to a whole different level, and that is all thanks to social media. Our proposition also talks about addiction. It is true, addiction does occur. Masri has done a study that states that only a third of social media users have addiction, and usually it's mild. And if you look deeper into it, most of them have other conditions such as addiction to cigarettes, to alcohol, to junk food. This shows that addiction has multiple intrinsic and extrinsic factors that is involved in it, and to state that social media is the main cause of addiction is false and intentionally malicious. In conclusion, I want all of you to go back into the time where we had COVID-19 pandemic during the lockdown. You needed your Facebook, your social media platforms to keep you connected with your friends and family, online portals, your YouTube to keep you informed on what was going on during the pandemic, your Zoom, your Google Meet, for you to keep in touch with your doctors, for you to be able to communicate with your colleagues to conduct your daily work. Therefore, social media is without a doubt a more positive than negative impact. Thank you.
So she said that social media was an asset during the pandemic. You all get the point?
Yeah.
Now, to sum it up the whole thing, to support Venetia's view and Hafizul view and Adi's view, let's welcome Ifti, isn't it? Huh? Yeah. Ifti Hussein to sum it up the whole thing.
We'll just test the slides first. How do I do?
Can you
Oh, wait, no.
point at the computer?
Oh, I have to point it. I'm going backwards.
Don't point here.
It's not the computer.
All right, okay. So before I begin what I want to talk about, I just want to address a little thing about the virtual nature of social media that the proposition brought up. Social media, as Adi said, is not really virtual because it's an abstract concept. We just use technology to be able to perceive it. So what I want to talk about is the philosophy of social media. There are 4 principles that I want to discuss. Goffman's presentation of self, Bourdieu's social capital, Sartre's existential project, and Heidegger's shared world. Goffman describes the presentation of self as the way that an individual presents themselves regardless of any objective in their mind. Now, what is the context for this within social media? Well, if you're an entrepreneur, microblogging sites like Twitter are ideal for building your brand identity. And these things are free. It's a free way of being able to express your ideals. It's a free way of being able to express your opinions and connecting with your audience. And there may be an argument to say that brick and mortar shops are being affected by all of this, but you know, everyone has to adapt, right? Things change. The loom doesn't exist anymore. We use machinery. So social media, as Hafiz said, democratizes access to entrepreneurship. So studies have shown that on an individual level, people do have an inauthentic experience. I think the proposition does say this, an inauthentic experience with social media. But we don't believe that this is fully the case, because the way that people express themselves in a more positive way than they are in real life is actually a means to accrue social capital. And social capital is described by Bourdieu as an aggregation of resources that is linked to a durable network of relationships, membership to a group. And this is important because this membership gives people credit. This capital gives you social credit. And strategizing this social credit, this social capital, allows you to build your economic capital. This is a suggestion by Bourdieu himself. He says that social capital and credit can lead to economic capital. So by managing the presentation of self, you're able to accrue social credit, social capital, and thus you're able to increase your economic capital. This is a net positive for social media because people are able to increase their standard of living. They get to be better people, live easier lives. Now, some people might say that you know, this self-interested way of, this self-interested way of presenting yourself, this very methodical way of accruing social capital is not ideal, that it's not good. But this is the way, as Adi said, as Hafiz says, this is the way that we have done things for generations, for millennia. This is all part of being a human being. There is nothing new about this. Now, if we talk about the existential project, Sartre describes that existence precedes essence. What this means is, if we exist, if we have actions, if we have relationships, this is what gives us meaning, gives meaning to our lives, right? And so we talk about fake news, we talk about misinformation. This doesn't apply in the way that the opposition is speaking about, because everyone has agency. The opposition is infantilizing adults. They are saying that adults cannot make their own decisions. This is untrue. And on the opposite side, as Vanessa said, people build communities online. They build online communities, marginalized groups are able to find like-minded people, and they're able to give meaning to their lives. And again, as Vanessa said, interpersonal relationships are key to positive influence on mental health. Now, why are people attracted to these social media networks? They're attracted to these social media networks because on them we can connect with people, we can be with people, we can care for people, and we can be cared by people. And Heidegger talks of the shared world, a world in which we live by expressing our concern for others, our loved ones and strangers, because we as humans believe that humanity is more than just a fact of nature, but a value in which value that is built by our deeds. Social media, I'm telling you, cements our bonds in this shared world, because these communities that we build online are larger, they're far more vast and far more real than the real world itself. Social mediums have been sown into our past. Social media is cultivating our present, and our future will be beautiful and bountiful when we harvest everything that it gives us. I conclude that social media does not have more negatives than positives.
Social credit, social capital lead to economic capital, to better and easier and fruitful life, better than the real world. Dr. Elizabeth, what have you got to say about this? Please.
Thank you, facilitator of the evening, fellow judges, ladies and gentlemen, and the opposition team and our proposition team. All right. You mentioned about something that is so philosophical and something that is intangible, right? And it is something that a lot of us try to capture. You talk about the social capital equivalent to economic capital. So what do you mean by that? If you think that the social capital of a person, example, a person that is a cleaner or a waitress or a waiter, or someone that is in the poverty group, they don't really use the social media, especially those in the rural areas, as we understand that in many parts of the world, you know, like Africa, and they can't access it. So, do you mean that these people who are not accessible to the social media, they are not providing the economic capital or the social capital? Are they useless? No, right? No. You cannot say they do not have value. If value is based on you are able to influence somebody for business, for marketing, example. So do you mean that the scammers are more valuable? You know that in the recent news. All right. This crypto exchange called FTX, the founder is actually a young so-called young businessman. He was even entered into Forbes 30. However, this crypto exchange suddenly just collapsed. And do you know what? He is charged under the US court, and he's plainly said that his exchange is a scam, and it affected so much, not only to the retail investors, but to the institutional investors as well. And so much loss that it was like 50 billion loss. This is considered the breach of trust and the cybercrime. So that's what we mentioned just now, why we said that it is scammers, cybercrime that is increasing, because we understand that those so-called expert gurus, they can even cheat on people that are knowledgeable. So do you think that social media is not something that is vulnerable to human beings? Yes, you can say that we are adults, we can make decisions, but how come so many of these institutional experts and retail investors, they cannot make the correct decision because they are being influenced by the so-called social media of hype, of fear of missing out, FOMO they call it. It is not only in the crypto space, but also in the stock market, which have actually affected the whole world economies. Right? There is another one. If you mention that during COVID-19, yes, many of us are depending on social media. But back to the story of places such as Africa, such as Latin America, such as even Sabah, Sarawak, those rural areas, what I mentioned before, no internet line. How are you going to know that this COVID-19 news? No. What happened was that our health team in our health clinics, they went down to these places in the rural areas doing outreach. Personally, I was involved in this COVID-19 management. I was part of the flying doctors team, went to the rural areas that is so hard to reach to give them treatment. So from this, I can say that we strongly believe that social media has a negative impact to the society. Thank you very much.
Yeah, here we are arguing about positive and negative. And Dr. Elizabeth pointed to us that there are people who don't even have internet, who do not know what is social media all about. Okay, who have argued convincingly? That is not for us, that's for the judges. They will let us know the result later. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, are you all happy now? Are you all geared up again? Can we have a 20-minute break?
Yes.
Can?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Come back after 20 minutes.